Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to those of you who are joining us for the third part of our science policy, what I'm calling the science policy trilogy. And a warm welcome to those of you who are joining us for the first time. This afternoon's session is called the Atlas of Islamic World Science and Innovation, and a case study of Egypt. Our speakers are three. We have Michael Bond, who's a writer, a science writer from the United Kingdom, and a long-time consultant and former editor of New Scientist magazine. Maged El-Shabini, who's the president of the Academy of Scientific Research and Technology. To Michael's right and to my left is Hassan Azazi, professor of chemistry at the American University in Cairo. My name is Ehsan Massoud. I'm also a science journalist. I'm based in London, and I'm the editor of a magazine called Research Fortnight. The Atlas study is quite possibly the first survey in the English language of science and innovation in Egypt. It's a joint activity of many different partners, including the Royal Society of London, which is the professional academy of scientists, as well as the Bibliotheca, and the research teams that have carried out the survey are both British and also from Egypt, especially from the Bibliotheca, some of whom are here in the audience. Michael will be presenting some of his reflections and observations of science and innovation in Egypt as he's traveled the country over the past year, I think. And then after that, we'll hear from our two colleagues from Maged and from Hassan about their own thoughts, and then we'll open it up for a broader conversation between our panelists and also between our panelists and all of you who joined us this afternoon. So without any more delay, I will ask Michael to start. And just before I do, can I please ask you all to either turn off your mobile phones or to switch them on silent? Thank you.
Thank you, Ehsan. I actually only have 3 slides, so I didn't want to overwhelm you with statistics. So it's mainly going to be me talking. I'm going to start just by telling you a little bit about the Atlas project, and then I'll give you some highlights of specifically the Egypt report. The Atlas of Islamic World Science and Innovation. This was conceived in 2009 by the Organization of the Islamic Conference, the OIC, and the Royal Society in London. And the idea is to provide an overview of the state of science and innovation across the Islamic world via a series of detailed reports, country by country. The project is sponsored by several partner organizations who help manage and oversee it, including the Qatar Foundation, the Islamic Development Bank, the International Development Research Centre of Canada, the British Council, several others. The organizers chose a group of countries they believe to be broadly representative of the Islamic world in terms of economy, culture, society, and scientific progress. And these are Malaysia, Egypt, Jordan, Pakistan, Qatar, Indonesia, Senegal, and Kazakhstan and Nigeria. Of these, the Malaysia report has been published. Egypt, Jordan, Pakistan, and Qatar are imminent, and the others following afterwards. Now, I owe you an apology because today was meant to be the dramatic launch of the Egypt country study. But unfortunately, given the number of partners involved in this project, we haven't managed to sign it off completely. So the finished reports are not available. And what you've got in your hands, hopefully, you've got what was handed out at the door, which is a summary of the recommendations and the conclusions. The finished report will hopefully be available in the next few weeks. You can obtain it very easily if you keep tabs on the Royal Society's website, on the first page of this document, at the bottom, there's a web address, and there's a little tab on there if you're interested in getting the final copy of the report. I believe that links through to a form where you can fill out your address and we'll send you a copy. So each country report is written and researched by a lead author and representatives of a national research partner, which is appointed within each country. In the case of Egypt, the lead author is myself, and the research partner is the Bibliotheca's Center for Special Studies and Programs. And some of my research partners are sitting down here ready to correct any mistakes I make. Each report is also guided by a national focal point, which is a government agency or academy within the country that provides data and helps with access to officials. In this case, it's the Egyptian Academy of Scientific Research and Technology, headed by Dr. Magid. The reports are not designed to be completely exhaustive analyses. They're meant to be authoritative, but at the same time accessible to anyone interested in how science is or isn't contributing to the development of their country. They're based on the latest data and on extensive interviews with scientists, policymakers, and really anyone with a stake in the scientific development. They look at all aspects of a country's science and innovation system and all the factors that shape it and are affected by it. It's a very broad take on science, broader than you might expect. It includes the political environment, cultural values, public attitudes towards science, how science is covered by the media, the state of education, the importance of innovation to industry and business, where the strength areas are, where the weak areas are, and also, very importantly, how science is helping to reduce poverty and improve sustainable development. What is it all meant to achieve? I think there are two broad aims. The first is to draw attention to the state of science in the country and generate discussion and debate about the way it is progressing, the direction it's going in. What are the national priorities? What should they be? And how should science be tackling them? Secondly, to identify opportunities for collaboration between researchers and industry, between government and NGOs, both inside and outside the country, to bring people together. So moving specifically to the Egypt report. It's partly a large data gathering exercise. There are a lot of statistics in there. The latest on innovation in science, education and other things. But it's also, we spent about 3 months in the field visiting people, talking to people. So the report represents a wealth of opinion. We started off in late 2010, carried on after the revolution. We talked to people from all levels of academia, from university professors to students, also to policymakers, industrialists, venture capitalists, entrepreneurs, farmers, school teachers, journalists, really anyone who would talk to us, and all of whom gave us hugely valuable insights into the state of science and what their hopes and aspirations were. To give you a few highlights, I should point out I'm not going to talk directly about the many reforms that are underway and have been underway since 2007. Possibly Dr. Magid will refer to them later. I'm going to just focus on the research landscape as we found it, and this is really a result of the last 30 years, the things that have shaped Egyptian science over that time. Now, the first thing that many people brought up when we talked to them was inevitably the lack of money for research. This year, I think the government's spending on R&D has risen to 0.4% of GDP, but between 1996 and 2010 it averaged 0.22%, which is on a par with the Arab world, but below average for sub-Saharan Africa, and it's barely 1/10 the OECD average. And inevitably this has made it difficult for researchers to do much without some kind of external funding. But it's not just about R&D spending. It's equally important to have a fully functioning education and academic system. Almost everyone we spoke to from the older generation compared today's education system highly unfavorably with when they were growing up in the 1960s and 1970s. And it's not just nostalgia. One major issue seems to be the sheer density of students. Egypt has more students per higher education institution than just about any other country in the Middle East and North Africa. In fact, the number of students entering universities and higher technical colleges has nearly doubled in the last 25 years. It's not in itself necessarily a bad thing, but in this case, quality has suffered. Probably the most alarming statistic in this context is that the proportion of pupils majoring in science subjects at the end of secondary school dropped from 70% in 1970 to 32% in 2008. Now that is a worrying trend for a country that's trying to build a modern innovation-based economy. Another problem we found was the lack of critical thinking among school and university students. They generally seem not to be taught to think like scientists. This approach to thinking is not part of the standard curriculum. To question orthodoxy, to analyze critically, to find your own way of tackling a problem, to appreciate the thrill of discovery, these crucial elements to scientific thinking. Instead, memorization and rote learning tend to dominate. All this could have serious implications for the future of any country. One industrialist told us, you cannot build a country on people just repeating what they have been taught. Despite these challenges in the education system, we found a huge appetite for entrepreneurship and innovation. But there do seem to be many barriers to converting that appetite to commercial reality. I'm just going to move to my first slide. In fact, I have no idea how to do that. I normally use a map. Oh, yeah. Okay. This is a study by the World Economic Forum in 2011 where they asked about 100 business leaders and entrepreneurs in Egypt what the main obstacles were for them doing business in Egypt. And you can see policy instability. Now, this was carried out after the revolution, so that's perhaps inevitable. In fact, before we properly study this, I just want to show you, this was the study that they did the previous year, 2010, before revolution. And you can see, number one, corruption is the thing that they considered the major obstacle. Now that's dropped down the list. I suppose you could say that's progress. The things that are most relevant underneath political instability here are, you can see, inadequately educated workforce and access to financing. There does seem to be a major problem in the lack of private investment in R&D. Very small. Most businesses do not appear to subscribe to the business model that focuses on the development of their own products. A survey of 3,000 enterprises by the Ministry of Scientific Research, I think Dr. Maggott carried this out in 2009, it found that just 18% were actively investing in any kind of technological innovation. Simply not a priority. We found a deep lack of understanding, a gulf in trust, really, between academia and industry. And it seemed this is making it almost impossible for them to serve each other's needs. There's a survey here by the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor. This is measuring the level of access that businesses have to research and development. So access to the lab, if you like, access to results from the lab. And you can see here in a survey in many countries, Egypt came out bottom. There's a less interaction between academia and industry in Egypt than anywhere else measured in this survey. Part of the problem seems to be a lack of business awareness and entrepreneurial incentive among academics. Now, actually, this is something I know that Dr. Hassan Azazi has been addressing at the American University in Cairo. He may want to speak about it later. I'm painting a bit of a negative picture here. There are many case studies in the report where we found highly impressive examples of people doing science and taking research into technologies. There's plenty of great stuff out there. One obvious success story in Egypt, it was palpable wherever we went, was collaboration. And I mean Egypt collaborating with researchers outside of Egypt. It's been very successful here. Egypt plays a critical linking role in the Middle East and North Africa. In terms of the number of papers Egyptian scientists have co-authored with researchers within this region, I think only Jordan is more collaborative. And then, of course, since 2007, Egypt has tripled the number of grants it wins each year from the EU's FP7 research funding scheme as a result of the Decade of Science partnerships. Finally, what about the social and cultural aspects? I'll talk about the public attitudes to science in a second, but I just wanted to mention, in terms of culture within the scientific establishment itself is crucial. And something that struck me in many places we visited was that Egypt's regulations make it very hard for academics to move between universities. Faculty jobs seem to be for life. And the effect is a fairly rigid, uncompetitive academic environment. And apparent in the lack of cross-fertilization. I mean, this is not only between universities, it's also between faculties within the same universities. Faculties tend to seem to work independently, and interdisciplinary research is not that common. But there are some great examples of where that is starting to happen. And finally, public attitudes to science. As I said, part of our research was conducted before the revolution in late 2010, part of it afterwards. When I came back to Egypt in May 2011, I noticed a dramatic change in attitude among scientists and science students. Great optimism, great expectations that things would change, and also a desire to do research and be involved in things that affected their community and the whole country. This was, I noticed this immediately, and everyone I spoke to at that time, this sense, this very optimistic sense, and came across. It seems there's a great opportunity to take that optimistic view of science as being critical to Egypt's future and sow it among the public. Maybe things have changed in recent months, but we found very little popular appetite for science and little public awareness of scientific and sustainability issues. Now, the media has a huge role to play, especially since many issues of national importance are science-based: water, food, energy. And there's surely a need to improve the reporting of scientific issues in the press, but also perhaps to make scientists more accessible to journalists and more visible to the public. I'll just leave you with this quote we had from. We spoke to the chairman of the scientific committee of the Misal Khair Foundation, one of the few NGOs to be giving money to research in Egypt. And he said, we have to make the case that research is important for the alleviation of hardship. You can't just presume that people will get that message. I think that's a very important one. I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Lots of food for thought in what you found and what you've observed. I'd like to move straight away to Professor Magid to make his presentation and perhaps offer a few responses.
Actually, I need to respond to a few of these issues before we can go into the presentation itself. In terms of finance, we definitely were always at the level of, if we go back to the history, long time ago, Egypt was at 0.9% of the GDP. But this was long time ago, maybe like 15 or 18 years ago. At that time, the economy of Egypt was low, and the amount of people who are spending on R&D was low, was little, and so it was at 0.9%. And then the population growth goes very high while the economy is not moving, because the two curves are working together. So we remained at 0.2%, up and above 0.2, 0.21, 0.24, never more than that. So we were faced with a situation that is staggering for over a period of 30 or 40 years, where the money is kept at the same level, and everybody is doing what he wants in the research, in all the research centers and universities, and very little is available. And everybody has to count in his own pocket to do his own research. So this was the situation. The society was totally away from science. They don't believe in the people wearing the lab coats. And everybody said, science and technology is out of service. We don't call on them. And the industry people, who were a long time ago, were great people, were really people who have vision and have entrepreneurship in their head, like the people who did the big industrial textile industry in Egypt long time ago. These guys are no longer exist as well. They were only traders who trade in things, and then they had the opportunity after the 70s with infitah, the opening of the market, to be able to bring technology with lines, and these lines produce, they get profit, and that's it. There's no need for science and technology. So everybody was happy with his own life. Nobody needed to do anything more. It took us many years to take the same slogan that the people were using, that science and technology is out of service, trying to convince the government that it is important to put money on science and technology. And you cannot change 30 or 40 years in few years. It will take you longer than that, especially if you are surviving now instead of 0.2 on 0.4%. So we are up from 0.2 to 0.4, and we are heading up to 0.6 or 0.7%. But this is definitely not enough. You mentioned a very right point. Look at this young age group who are sitting in the room. We are producing a lot of people who are talented in our universities, and we cared only about accessibility, not quality. Same amount of money we were spending over 2 million is the same amount of money we spend on 4 million. So eventually the quality has to be affected. You need to increase the number, you increase the money, you get the same quality. But what we cared about is the accessibility more than the quality. I think you also mentioned our people in science are reverting, especially in the last year of Sanawiyya, from being 78. When I was at school, 14 of the classes in this last year were all علم علوم. يا رياضة وعلم علوم, صح? والأدبي كان one class only. Now, this is a situation in Tanya Sanawi, and then when it goes to the third year, everybody is Adabi. Because, not because they hate science. Not because they don't want science. They want science. But the problem is that they have to think, what will be their future? Will they find a place at the Faculty of Medicine or the Faculty of Engineering? They cannot. So they find a way, it's easier to go for commerce, to go for business. But even that is happening, we are still not lacking in the number of medical staff. We are even reducing it now. So we still have the same number, and we are able to export. So we cannot have everybody going into science unless we have more spending. So that's the situation. You are right. Critical thinking in school is deteriorating heavily. And this is something that we really have to do something, and we will never feel the effect of that unless we invest from now to the future. We started recently what's called the STEM schools. And the first school of that is done in 6 October. And they provided them with magnificent facility, lots of equipments, and a very good way of how to make critical thinking. But this has to be not only in the school of 150, it has to be in the schools of the 14 million we have. Egypt has 14.7 million in schools. It's a big task. Which government in the world can be able to put money for them? It requires a lot of funding. So, but it's important. We need to do and introduce this critical thinking. Policy, I mean, I'm glad to see the slide that shows the corruption is gone or went down a little bit, and something came out of it, which is policy instability. Policy instability is right. I mean, in so many places, policy changes with the people. They don't stay. People move, they move with the policy together. And we need to be much more persistent than this. I think our problem in Egypt is mainly with the industry, the culture of the industry. You refer to the survey we did in 3,000 companies. We found that 18% only were doing innovative thinking. We're thinking of how to do business based on innovation. The rest are not. There's only trade. So we have a problem at all these issues. We are working on them. And I'm going to show you some of the things we are working on. But we cannot fix everything in few years that has been broken over decades. It will take us some time. I'm sure we communicated on this report so many times. And every time I receive an email, there is an update of the data itself. We have been working on this now for a year or more. Over this period of time, the data, the indicators has been changing. And the reason not because we do surveys, but we want to have an automated system we are able to monitor the performance itself. And I think that this is very important. Everybody has to believe in. The question, indicators or numbers, sheer numbers is value of nothing. 0.2, 0.4, 1, 5%, it means nothing. What do you do with this 5%? What is the outcome of this money? What is the real value of what you did? What is the performance indicators you are doing with? That's the most important thing. And as all of you, I think is the most important thing is that you have a better environment to work on, and you are able to be productive, innovative, and you are able to contribute to the society. So I will try not to I have 5 minutes.
You have 5 minutes left.
All right. So, because, I have to respond. So I'm actually between, to stick it to this and without going into the slides, because I think this will be better for us, the focus here.
I think it would be. No, that's a good idea, because then we can also. I think that's a good idea. Let's go with that.
I think we need to stick, because the point raised, I'm sure in your head now there is a lot of questions and things we need to answer. If I take you now into a little bit technical thing, I think I would distract you away from
that would be much appreciated.
So
thank you, Magid.
I'll stop it there.
Thank you so much. Let me turn now to Professor Hassan Azazi, who will also deliver a short response on what he's heard. And Hassan is a professor of chemistry at the American University in Cairo.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much. Thanks very much for the organizing committee for inviting me to speak to you today. I really like to recognize Michael Bond and the team at Bibliotheca Alexandrina for really carrying out this very important activity. We are putting the science and innovation in Islamic world and in Egypt under the microscope and asking very tough questions and presenting real data. And this is, in my opinion, will be a very important step to solve the problem. I would like to respond. I come from the American University in Cairo, as Ahsan mentioned, and I would like to present my view from my side of things, the way I look at things, different from Professor Magid Sherbini, different from Michael. This is my point of view as a researcher and a scientist, quote unquote. Funding. I believe, in my opinion, there is no problem in funding. There are way too many sources of funding that are out there. Arab countries, there is funding. Egypt, there is funding. And Egypt now, as also Michael mentioned, non-governmental organizations now offer funding for the first time in the history of Egypt. We have Masr al-Khair, we have Nahdat al-Mahrusa, we have Bibliotheca Alexandrina also offering small grants for research, STDF funding, RDI funding, all of this within Egypt. And then you go out of Egypt, Qatar National Research Foundation, Arab Science and Technology Foundation in Emirat, FP7, European, many sources of funding. So I do not see funding as a problem. What I see a problem is patent and intellectual property that comes with this funding. And this is a problem. This is a major problem. Unfortunately, many Egyptian scientists and researchers, they are very happy to get the funding, but they don't even read the intellectual property. I will give you 3 examples very quickly. Number 1, one of my students applied for a mobility grant we're collaborating with Bonn University in Germany. And one of my students applied for a mobility grant, and she received the mobility grant from an agency in Egypt. 20,000 euro for her and one of her colleagues to go to Germany 6 times over a period of 2 years, and only paying for air tickets and pocket money. What they want? They want over 85% of intellectual property of any research that may result from this project. What have we done? We rejected the funding after it has been approved. 1. 2, funding from an Arab country, from an organization in this Arab country to twin us with one of the universities within this Arab country to actually transfer technology properly to them. What they want? They want all the IP to be owned by that other university, despite we are the generator of IP. 2. 3, a material transfer agreement with a university in the US. This is no funding here. They will only allow us access to very specialized software that we are going to use to sniff through hundreds and hundreds of genomes and our own genomes that we have sequenced. What they want? They call the software and any sequences, peptides or DNA sequences that are generated by this software, their property. We are free to publish, we are free to do any kind of research for profit. We cannot commercialize. What did they say? Thank you very much. So I think we have been for a long time not paying attention to IT and our rights. And this is the most important. We should not be doing research for research. We should come out as a researcher and scientists out of our comfort zone and try to go to societal problem. Start from a problem in the society, in food, in health, in pollution, in energy, you name it. And then go back to the lab and try to develop a practical solution. And develop this practical solution into a prototype and then spin off a company out of the university, number 1, to solve the problem of unemployment within graduates of technical universities, science, medicine, and so on, engineers, and so on and so forth. Number 2, support the economy, because we need for a change to produce high-tech product and increase our export of high-tech product rather than just exporting natural product, batatis, burtuqan, natural gas, and so on. We need to export high-tech product. So this is, and at the same time solve a persistent and really complicated societal problem. So this is my take on the funding and the IP rights. Last week, I chaired a conference at the American University in Cairo, just named Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And during this conference, I met 7 of the elite venture capitalists in Egypt. And I was asking them, what kind of fund they fund. Mainly they're funding in ICT, and not in the ICT hardware industry, ICT in .com. حاجات like فوري, مش عارف, أوجرا, يعني taxi ogra. يعني some company did something that you type some sort of a statement on the internet. It goes being printed on a t-shirt, and this t-shirt will be developed to your home. كلام يعني حاجة ظريفة جدا. Very nice, but I don't think we can build an economy and become globally competitive as a country doing such kind of work. I ask them, well, how much funding you have for nanotechnology-based products or biotechnology? Say, no, we have no funding. And not only that, we do not even expect in the coming future that we will be funding any of these technologies. I was very shocked and told him why. And he said, well, for biotechnology, the tools have not been yet developed. I told him, what? What do you mean tools have not? We have missed already. We have missed the biotechnology revolution. Started in 1980. احنا متأخرين 30 سنة. He does not know that now thermal cycler are in bags. And you can have the entire thermal cycler in a suitcase and walk around with it, for example, and all the other equipment that we need for biotechnology. So venture capitalist culture in Egypt, I think they need education. And they need to change the kind of expert that they consult. And they need to really look into advanced technologies that does not require much funding, but at the same time can really make a major change in this country with regard to economy and global competitiveness. What do we need? I will give you my wish list, your wish list. We need to make researchers and scientists happy. How can we make them happy? Number one, give them equipped labs. We need to build highly equipped labs. We need to provide equipment, central facilities with equipment that when they break down, we have maintenance contract that become fixed and we don't have to wait for 4 months or 6 months because a TEM or SEM is broken down and nobody comes to fix it. We need to give them reagents and supplies. We need to give them respectable salaries. And we need to give them confidence and ownership of their product, of their project. I work at the American University in Cairo, and I have 18 students. 17 of them are coming from National University, from Helwan, from Bani Suef, from Qanat al-Suez, from Cairo, from Ain Shams, and one from Alexandria, actually, School of Pharmacy. I find the education level is good. What I don't like about them is confidence. They have no confidence. They do not believe that they can innovate. They do not believe that they can do it. They do not believe that they can push the envelope. But once I work a little bit on this, give them the confidence, give them ownership, they do wonders. What they also need to be taught innovation. Our students and you need to be encouraged to innovate. Don't be afraid. Whoever is doing the innovation in the US or Europe, somebody like you in your age and your education. You need to innovate and be, strong about it. Move forward, push the envelope, and try to innovate. And the other thing that we need to learn is entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship meaning that once we have developed an innovation in the lab, we need to work very hard with people in the market and business consultant and lawyers and so on and so forth in order to develop this into a prototype and move it to the market in a form of a spin-off company. This is how the university and research center can really play the ultimate role and become engaged with the society. We need to solve problem of the society, we need to solve unemployment, and we need to strengthen the Egyptian economy with high-tech and innovation-based product. This is my view. I believe we are being considered by many people that we are a successful group. My novel diagnostics and therapeutic research group, I don't think so yet, but this is what we have been told several times. And again, I can see we have developed products that have been cited in Nature magazine and Science magazine several times last year. We have participated just for change in technology business plan competition organized by the Arab Science and Technology Foundation. 240 teams from all Arab countries have entered this competition last July, competing in everything you think about it, medicine, environment, food, energy, أي حاجة. We received first place. And received the plaque of honor for being a first Egyptian team to receive this. Not only that, we qualified to go to the Intel Global Challenge, 2 minutes, right, very nice. To the Intel Global Challenge in the Silicon Valley at UC Berkeley in California, and we scored 3rd place for the first time in the 7-year competition. 7 years competing with all international teams. So what I want to tell you this, This is all Egyptian students and in Egyptian soil. Yes, at the American University in Cairo, different management, different environment, yes, but still within Egypt, still with Egyptians. We can do it if we have the chance, and this is what we need to do. We need to think, again, innovation and entrepreneurship. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Azazi, and my thanks to all the panel for starting us off. We have about now maybe a little bit over 45 minutes for a discussion, and I've grouped it into, I've tried to be a bit clever and tried to group it into different themes, the themes that Michael started off with, and then which our two respondents have also picked on. I'm also going to include in the conversation colleague to our left here, Mohammed Yahya, who is also, like myself and Michael, is a science journalist and the editor of Nature in the Middle East, based in Cairo. Michael is a rapporteur for the session, but he will be stopping work for the next 45 minutes and participating in the conversation that we have. So let's start with the first, Michael, your first point, and but which I'd really like Magid to comment on, because there's a sort of clear difference of opinion between yourself and between Hassan here about funding. And Hassan's point is that, well, there really isn't much of a problem.
Well, it depends on who you are. I mean, if you are a good scientist, you will be able to find plenty of opportunities. But if you are not an excellent scientist in terms of writing a proposal, in terms of hunting grants, you will find it very difficult too. That's one thing. And I would like to say that funding for research projects, there's plenty of opportunities. But I think eventually, Dr. Azazi mentioned at the end, we need to build lab, we need to build infrastructure, and this is where the lack of the funding is. We have money for doing research project, but look at the scientist himself. Look at all the people in this room. If anybody here would like to promote himself, he would do the research, he will do a publication, and then he will wait for his promotion. But none of us has been thinking of how to transfer this into intellectual property knowledge and how to make a patent on it and how to go through this process. It's not one of the output that we need to think of. To have a good science and technology, you need to have publication, patent, prototype, and eventually products. These four, without them, you will never be able to reach the economy. And I think what Dr. Azazi was saying, we complete the cycle all the way to a product, then we are able to be a successful group who is doing something in the business of biotechnology or diagnostic or whatever. We need, all of us has to be working on this cycle, completing all of it, and taking care of our intellectual property. You have raised some of the critical issues that are happening. At the time when there is nobody having regulation on patents, the US and the European and the developed countries were playing with everything. Once they have everything in their hand, then they starting putting rules for everybody else. And that's why we keep fighting most of the time on the intellectual property right and some of the rules which are currently in the trade agreements. Some of the trade agreements are very oppression for us in the countries in the developing world. We need to change that. But we have to be aware ourselves of what we have. We have to be aware that our water, our land, include seeds, include material that are very important for the future of our generations to produce good pharmaceutical, and we don't allow that to go away from us. We need to work on it by ourselves and produce the patents, the product that will be used by our people. Intellectual property is something of value, something very important, and something that is need to be for all of us to take care of. Finally, a final word on the funding. There is opportunities, but there is some catch in some of them, and Dr. Azazi have mentioned, so we have to take care of that. At the same time, we have to be proactive. We don't wait for the chance. We have to create the chance. And that's how, and I think that Michael have mentioned this, we are very hungry appetite on international cooperation, because we have said all the time that we will never be able to do the things alone. We have to do it with international partners. And I think that this is the way how we are interactive with the international community, and we are able to get the opportunity of funding and other things as well.
Just very briefly, Mohammed, when you visit top labs, as you do for your work, how much is a lack of funding something that you observe? Oh.
Okay, right. Right, okay, so if you're looking at the Egyptian context, I would say that governmental institutions, they have a serious funding problem on institutional level. So if you look at something like the National Research Center, it is very poorly funded. And there's a huge number of researchers working there. So if you divide that over the number of people there, it's a tiny amount of money available. On another level, if you're looking at the amount of money available for PhDs in public universities, I was recently doing a story about that, and we kind of calculated the amount of money that goes from the government to the PhDs, to the number of students who are working on PhDs, and it came down to something around £34 per student, which is not even enough to get water.
Egyptian pounds, not
Egyptian
British
pounds, yes. Which I don't think is enough to get drinking water for a couple of months there. So I think there's a problem on that front. But having said that, it's interesting to see that there are certain individuals who have been able to pursue funding from different sources. And I think that's because they excel, and which is a very normal pattern, because if you're good, you will get funding. If you actually are able to write a good proposal and impress someone, then funding will come. And it's not just the case here in Egypt. It's the case everywhere else in the world, I would say.
Michael, you wanted to just come briefly, and then I'm going to invite the audience on funding.
Yeah, just a point about it's not just who you are, but it's where you are in terms of how much access you have to funding. We had some unnerving, distressing really experiences when we visited places away from Cairo in Upper Egypt. For example, South Valley University. I remember sitting in a conference room there, and a lot of people had come to hear us talk about the Atlas project, and we'd come to talk to them about what they were doing. And as it gradually dawned on them that we weren't offering funding opportunities, the room would gradually empty. It was like, no money, see ya. And it was this sense of real desperation for money in Upper Egypt, certainly.
Thank you very much. Well, on the topic of funding, if we can keep to that, who amongst our distinguished Alexandrian and other audience would like to comment? And before you do, if you could please tell us who you are and what you do.
Till somebody get the courage and picks up the microphone. I say £34, that's true, and this shows that they are able to do any thesis can never cost less than £20,000. I mean minimum, between 20 to 100, whatever. So definitely the difference between 20,000 and 34 is coming out of the pocket of the person himself. So I just want to say that, and if you calculate how many theses are being done every year, it shows you how much you are contributing to the budget of the research in Egypt. It will be more than 0.4%. But we cannot officially calculate that as government spending. So.
It's the problem of GDP. So just before I'd like to we're getting some hands up, so our audience is warming up. Yes, sir, tell us what you do and your name.
My name is Mustafa Nawar. I'm a teaching assistant in the Faculty of Pharmacy, Cairo University, the Department of Microbiology. I'll have to contradict a bit about the funding, because as of maybe the last 2 years, when the management changed and the new dean arrived, there is a lot of money for research in what's called بند 3 أبحاث, and we are getting what we want. So I'll have to say that it may be different from one university to another according to the management, but the money is there. Let me say I'm getting my PCR kits, my DNA extraction, my so and so. I'm getting things that I need from the budget of the university. So the money is going there. I'll have to say that's going to some people and not reaching the others. So the problem of funding may not be as true as was described. I will not say that everybody is funded equally or that the funding is excellent, but there is money. maybe it is misused, or it's some people are diverting it for their own personal gains, but in some places it's actually getting somewhere. So
Okay.
maybe
Who would like to agree with our colleague? Who would like to agree? Yes, the lady just. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Yasmin Al-Abd. I work in the National Research Center. I agree with the point of funding. We don't have a problem about funding because my professor is engaged in 3 or 4 international projects. The problem is that how come I am postdoc, my salary is less than the salary of the maid staying with my kids for me to work in the lab. I'm sorry to say this. It's improper, and it's not fair. I'm leaving my kids and leaving my life to concentrate in the lab to do work. How come? This one thing. The other thing is the equipment. Our lab is very well equipped. The problem is the maintenance. There has to be put rules to the companies. Their main goal is just to sell the product. And there are nothing in their contract that's hard for them to keeping the maintenance every month or every 6 months. So when one equipment is not working, we don't stay for 6 months. This would be good. We stay for a year or 2, or we throw it and we bring another one. So, thank you.
Thank you. Let's take 1 or 2 more comments from the audience. Yes, the gentleman who's already stood up. Yeah. Tell us your name, please, and what you do.
In the name of Allah. My name is Muhammad Tariq. I am a professor assistant in Faculty of Science, Zoology Department. I have a great aspire that I will have the Nobel Prize at 2020, inshallah.
Would you mind just standing a little bit further from the mic, because your voice is, alhamdulillah, very loud.
Our problem in the researchers and research centers or universities as well is not the funding. It is the corrupted administration, because the funding maybe go to the national or university security. The funding, the budget of the university and education, it goes to the security, not for young scientists. I am a part-time lecturer. Our salaries maybe $15 by the $15 by 6 months, because I am a part-time. It's called in Arabic intidab, because we are not officially hired.
Can I stop you there? I think you've made a very good point, and I'm going to come to Professor Magid to respond. So if you
we have the talents, the talents in Egypt. We have the talents, we have the aspire, but we don't have the appreciation from our government or from the European universities. I have sent many times to European universities, but they don't accept me. They didn't accept me.
Okay.
They didn't accept me because I am Egyptian.
Thank you. Can you make a good point, and I will ask.
If you have the opportunity, we will do better than anyone in the world.
I'm sure you will. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Well.
So some good points here. I think I want to just.
Okay.
Before can you take a seat for a second?
Okay.
Thank you.
I definitely agree.
Magid, I just want to ask you to respond to one thing, because then we need to move on to some other points. And this is the point I think made by the first 2 questioners, which is I think we're in an environment where clearly project grants are available, whether they are internal sources in Egypt, whether they are from the wider Arabic-speaking countries, or whether they are international sources. But salaries are obviously, they don't match. And that's where there is a problem. It's difficult for people to earn. So somewhere in your longer term thinking, is there a plan to raise the level, the level of salaries?
Let me tell you very honestly, the 4.7 billion we are spending every year on science and technology, which is account to the 0.4%. 80% of that is the salaries. 80% is the salaries. So you only have 20% remaining to spend on what you need to do, equipment, supplies, and so forth. But is the salary enough? Absolutely not. I mean, we are talking about 400 pounds, 1,000, he's talking about $15. You know, the amount is very little. And this is not only for scientists, it's for all across the society in terms of all jobs. And the way to move forward for this is to increase the salary. Wait. We didn't interrupt you when you were talking. Leave us to speak. The second thing we tried to do, there was something called the quality of work, Gauda, and we added this recently to the salary as a supplementation. So they are getting, the professor is getting 2,000 pounds, and then 1,600 for the associate professor, and so forth. So there was addition, and there is a plan to increase this amount 8 times, but with the economy has to grow. So there is plan from the government to increase on the salary. Last thing I would like to add, some of the equipments we were talking about are some of the labs are well equipped, some of the labs are not well equipped. So we launched an initiative called Equip Me, and it is for younger researchers. 100,000 for each researcher, and 180 in the last cycle worth of 20 million pounds will receive the grant for their equipment, and the equipment will be here before the end of June. One last comment on some of the universities who have money, and then before they didn't have money. The university leadership sometimes believe the mentality of the cement, building buildings to allow more accessibility of people. And then one leader come and think of science and technology, so he start taking a piece of the money he is spending on the concrete and put it for science and technology for the people. Then the people feel it. Then comes another leader, say, no, we want more concrete, so he moved this money. The money is there, he doesn't put it in his pocket, but he just have to put the money. If you look at Cairo University, the budget, annual budget of Cairo University is 1.4 billion Egyptian pound a year. 1.4 billion Egyptian pound. How much the university is putting in science and technology at the time when I was working there was 500,000. Now it is 65,000 and went up to, I think, 12 million. It is now 12 million, okay? But this has to come with the leadership of the place, setting up priorities, what exactly need to be happening. So one of the issues is the funding, of course, coming into this.
Thank you very much, Magid. I'm going to move on to another of the big topics, the big themes that Michael mentioned when he was... I just hold your fire. You're going to have an opportunity. Let's move on, otherwise we could talk about funding until the end of the day. It's such a big topic, but we have a little bit to get to. Appreciate your patience. Michael, you mentioned critical thinking, and those of us who watch Egypt from the outside and occasionally visit, but for very unsatisfactory periods, we look at young people who overthrow dictators, and we think there's certainly no absence of critical thinking there. Have you noticed a difference or a change pre- and post-revolution just in terms of that ability to question and push and confront, which of course is very evident in the global media, but what about in the world of science? And then I'll put that same question to our panel and then come to our audience.
What I noticed before and after the revolution, the thing that always comes back to me is the dominant emotion, if you like, among students and young researchers that I heard was frustration that they'd embarked on a career in science, but how were they going to carry it through when there was so little funding and so little opportunity? Okay, just let me finish. After the revolution, the dominant emotion was expectation. And suddenly it was like a valve has been opened and people were seeing that here was an opportunity. So it's almost as if it's all in there. What I was talking about earlier about critical thinking was really to do with how science students are taught to think scientifically. And we heard from teachers, from people in industry and business constantly this lack of a scientific approach to tackling problems. I think that's a matter of the curriculum, the way it's taught. But I don't think there's any lack of potential entrepreneurial and spirit among. You just have to give them the right context.
Mohammed, what's your take on this?
Yeah, right. Okay. I personally think there is a huge difference between before the revolution and post-revolution. And I got that feeling particularly during this meeting because I've been to BioVision before, and this time it's completely different the way you see the young people approaching the researchers after every session. They're very willing to be open, to be talkative, to have a chat with them, to ask about their work, to ask for advice on how they can progress their careers. This was not present before. I remember when I was here for BioVision a couple of years ago, no, actually more than that, but 4 years ago maybe, it was very different. The young researchers were very reserved. They were a bit shy to interact, to talk with the speakers, who are very, very well educated and profound people. Actually, something very interesting today, I was talking to Richard Furakoyak, who's the head of the clinical neuroscience department from Switzerland, and he was telling me he's impressed by the young people he's had a chance to speak to today, but was telling me he's worried that their superiors will completely quench their ambitions in a few years. So,
well, we have a few superiors here. Hassan, so obviously your perspective is a little different, given that you're in a different kind of institution. It's better funded. It's in the large capital city. But where do you see the critical thinking story heading post-revolution?
I think I receive again, all of my students have not been taught at the American University in Cairo. So I receive them out of national universities or from graduate program or just fresh out of national universities. I don't see any problem with their ability to critically think once you respect them and empower them and tell them you can. انت بقول لي الحل. My team is 18 members. One of them is AUCian, graduate of AUC. 17 تانيين قناة السويس، بني سويف، كايرو، عين شمس، الإسكندرية, you name it. So I don't see any problem. We do not lack intelligence. We do not lack critical thinking. Once you teach the member of my team how to critically think and how to innovate, خلاص المشروع ده بتاعك. I have students spending the night. They don't go home. And these are not AUCian. AUCian will go home. So يعني, once they see the opportunity and the encouragement, they can do anything they want them. I think what we need, to make a long story short, if there is a political will, a leadership will, and understanding that we have problems in the community, we have economical problem, and the people who can solve this are researchers and scientists. So we need to empower them. Empower them with salaries, with equipped lab, with equipment, with all of this to solve our problem. But we need to agree on this first. Can these people solve our problem? If the answer is yes, then we need to empower them so they can solve the problem.
And just finally, briefly, Magid, on critical thinking.
I totally agree with Michael. That was frustration, then moving into expectation. And expectation sometimes very high, that even beyond reality, which is happening. And I think that this is, the more frustrated you are, the more expectation you would need to have and to seize the opportunity which is going on now. I think is that the young is our hope for the future. We have the last competition of Nigm al-Arab in Ulum. He's an Egyptian. Fame Lab is an Egyptian. The genius of math is an Egyptian. And all of them are young people. So I think it's very important that once they have the opportunity, they have the proper environment, they are able to excel. And they have to have this confidence in themselves, and we need to provide them the opportunity of that. and we need to hammer the oppression that comes from the superior on them. Once there is something like that, a report of a complaint that somebody is, is oppressed from his superior, we do our best, to the best we can, to help him, as long as he has rights. But I would like to urge you all, even though to break the rules, respect should be mutual with your superiors, and at the same time you need to have equal opportunity, and you need to have your opportunity in life. And these guys doesn't miss the resilience or the stamina or the will or the intelligence or the innovation in their head. They have all these in their thinking. But I totally agree with Michael that we need to start that not as a fighting. It has to become natural. It has to be in the curriculum of your education. It has to be within the kid itself when he was in kindergarten. We need to change our curricula that are able to create this critical thinking in our education. And this is something we are endeavoring with. The culture needs to change. The culture of high school needs to change. The culture of schools themselves need to change. And so I think, I hope without education, there will be no science and technology. And without science and technology, there will be no economy. I mean, this is my belief. You have to have the three of them.
Thank you, Professor Magid. So let's turn to the audience. But before I do, I'd like to take a poll, a little vote here. How many of you sitting in this audience think that there is a problem of critical thinking among young people and that this is a barrier to going forward? How many? So that's about maybe a quarter, a bit less. How many of you think there is no problem of critical thinking? Maybe a little bit less, or about even. So it's
people who does undecided.
They're undecided. It's a good sign. It's a good sign. Critical thinking often means not making hard choices. So let's take some comments and questions from the audience. So people who haven't, yes, the gentleman there who's waiting very patiently, thank you. Tell us your name and tell us what you do.
Well, Mohammed Gramsi. I graduated in August 2011, and as soon as I graduated, I got employed on contract basis on a project funded by the STDF in the National Research Center. I have seen too much corruption and many problems. I will not narrate my story and what I've seen, but summing it up in main points, we could reduce it in a very reductionist.
Now you can tell the story, sir.
Well, at least three main problems. One is the employment and the selection of the included. Dr. Magid, sorry, would understand pretty much that in the National Research Centers, those who get permanent contracts would first need to stay there on a temporary contract basis, and that temporary contract basis is something like you're paid from 200 to 400 Egyptian pounds per month. That's equivalent to less than $100. And such condition, you will stay, and you have to stay in order to get permanently hired. You have to stay for more than 2 to 3 years. The batch that entered the NRC on 2006 has got employed on the permanent contract basis in 2011, and that's like 5 years, getting paid £200 per. Such conditions would filter only the very low quality research assistants to stay there. The mind elites just escape. They find the places in the elite research institutions in Europe and the US. I had peers that actually couldn't read English if they took any English test, they would definitely fail. Also, another problem.
Can I
Okay.
Can I stop you there? Thank you very much for making that point. I'd like to.
Employment.
Okay, that's one problem, but.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So some more hands are going up. I'd like to take a question or two from some of the women in the audience. So if you can keep your hands raised, and then yes, the lady there. Might need another adjustment of the microphone.
My name is Ines Khalid. I'm a high school student. And I have a story and a question. My story is my science teacher, who happens to be the school director, almost kicked a kid out of school because he told her that socialism is the answer. And she happens to apply the same policy in the chemistry class. So when I tell her that I read somewhere that hydrogen has another behavior or something, she will be like, no, get out and stuff. So how am I supposed to, even if I have critical thinking, I'm not allowed to express it anywhere, or maybe sometimes in Bibliotheca here, thank God.
That's a good story. What's your question?
My question is, sorry. Okay.
I'm going to get them to respond. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there actual indicators that there is hope or that education is actually going to improve, or are these just painkillers?
Okay, well, let's hold on to the first of those. I'd like perhaps Magid to just come in on your first point, which is, what should somebody do when a teacher says, actually, I'm not interested in you being critical of me?
Well, I'll tell me very honestly, in the schools we are developing now, which called the STEM school, we are developing it with the Ministry of Education, not us. But we are interested in the future, so we are helping the Ministry of Education to develop that. Our biggest problem is not students, are the teachers. We cannot find the right teachers to teach 150 students. And you cannot imagine how much time we are spending on training these teachers to be able to teach these students. And we said to the Minister of Education, we need to send people from now, after they graduate, to go abroad to learn and become teachers of critical thinking so they can come back and they will formulate the new teachers for us. And it's taking a lot of time. Teachers are the problem. Look, not all of them, but let me tell you this. What we, at the end to find a solution, we asked professors of universities and lecturers to become teachers in the school in their part-time. And they agreed happily without getting any payment because they felt that they are doing something for our kids. And I already had a competition to select 6 out of 300 coming to my office. They want to participate in this program. So I agree with you. It will take time because they have been built in stone. طالعين من أيام الطباشير بقى أنت عارفة فيعني.
Now, I heard a voice of dissent saying not all teachers are like the ones being described. So who would like to, are there any teachers in the audience who would like to come back and perhaps put another view? Was it? No? That's what I've just done. That's exactly done. I'm asking now. I suspect that if I was a teacher in this audience, I may not sort of suddenly say I'm a teacher, not given not the very critical thinking atmosphere we have. Well, in the audience we do have Mohammed Al Faham, and who is from the Bibliotheca, and Mohammed and his colleagues run a science club, and they've been running it for some years now. I've had the privilege of attending 1 or 2 of the sessions. Mohammed, can you say a word or two about the student-pupil relationship? Because, of course, you've been running your clubs before the revolution.
Well, I'm not ready for that. I'm just organizing the conference, you know.
Yes.
Well, maybe I'll talk something about the program that you know about, which is the research grants program. But just the one, not the club, not the young ones. Have you heard about our research grants program in the library? Who did? Who does? Who did? Whatever. Okay, the CSSP BA research grants. This is based on totally 100% transparency and competition. When we did this, it was the year 2004. Dr. Hani Hilal was there then. And then we decided on this program that to go like the NSF in the States. The applicant will apply directly to the BA. He will not go through the president of the university or the dean of the college or the chairman of the department or anyone. So what I would suggest for whatever that we can have in the future here in Egypt, just to have the applicants to apply directly to the agent, whatever they are, the academy, the National Science Foundation, National Science Center, whatever it is. I think this we have about now almost about 38, 39, maybe Asma could like this. We select every year about between 4 and 10 young researchers. They have done tremendous work since then. We keep contacting them, and they have the network. So what I would suggest for everyone, go and apply. And I have to say something about this program. We have discovered, you can talk to me after I finish. I can give you all the information. The one bad thing about actually what we found negative there is they cannot, as Dr. Magid said earlier, they cannot write good research proposals. This is a big problem there. So what I would recommend for everyone who is in high school, university, or making his master or PhD, before you do anything, you have to have very strong language skills, very strong computer skills, and then go and take whatever you can have of how you write research proposals, how you write technical papers. And by the way, I should say something which has happened. We had Dr. Muhammad Al-Sharqawi, who is a professor at Seattle. He came with us twice. I think Ihsan also came to a number of times to give workshops on how to write research proposals, how to write research papers. And amazingly, I will finish in half a minute. Amazingly, one of the Dr. Sharqawi was giving the introduction of how to write technical paper, and one of the PhD holders, assistant professor university, he was asking Muhammad Al-Sharqawi why we need an abstract in the front of the paper. Believe me, this happened. I stop here.
Thank you so much, Mohammed Al-Faham. The lady...
Dr. Hani Hilal told us 2 years ago that we are slaves. انتم أجرية. في مؤتمر في هيئة البلاد الألمانية. حضرتك.
Can the lady in the white take
موجودة الحاجات دي كلها بعد إذن حضرتك. موجودة الحاجات دي كلها. We have all of this, but we don't have the relationship between.
Can the lady in the white headscarf please ask her question? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. My name is Nurhan Shidad Al-Haran. I'm in the first year in secondary school, grade 10. Actually, I have just come from seconds, and I seen somebody is going to. I don't want to talk about this. Actually, my question is, our education now is going to be a change because our revolution that we have made before. Actually, they want to sorry. Yes. Please, I'm going to talk now. You don't have to talk إلا after أنا ما أتكلم. Thank you. على فكرة مش أدب حوار خالص إن أنت تتكلم بالطريقة دي. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead. You're very brave. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. المفروض ان هم دلوقتي I just want someone will talk in English. دلوقتي هم بيقولوا ان هم المفروض ان سنه ثالثه ثانوي سنه ثالثه من الثانويه العامه عايزين يغيروا تعليم بدل ما كان التعليم بدل سنتين ثانويه عامه السنه الاولى هتبقى كانت بيتاخد منها المجموع والثانيه بيتاخد منها المجموع بيتقسم على نصين يعني ده النظام القديم. النظام الجديد حاليا ان هم هيخلوا ثالثه ثانوي هي اللي عليها المجموع كلي تمام. وهيعملوا تشينج في التعليم حاليا، لكن انا مش شايفه اي تشينج في الموضوع دوت. انا شايفه ان هم لمجرد ان هم بيفكروا ان الاهالي بيدفعوا فلوس زياده عن اللزوم. ده تفكير انا شخصيا مش بحترمه خالص، لان الضغط هيبقى اكبر جدا على الطالب، هيشيل مواد اكتر، زائد ان انا ما اعرفش هم هيتكلموا ازاي. هم بيقولوا حاليا وزير التربيه والتعليم رافض الموضوع دوت، ومجلس الشعب بيقول لا، ده احنا المفروض هنعمل الموضوع دوت غصب عن وزير التربيه والتعليم. انا حاليا انا مش بحترم ده خالص. احنا المفروض ان احنا عايزين نغير ثقافه شعب وعايزين نغير ثقافه تعليم. احنا المفروض ان احنا نحترم الطالب اللي بيتعلم، نحترم المستقبل اللي هو عايز يرسمه لنفسه، مش وزير تربيه وتعليم يروح يرسم الموضوع دوت ومجلس الشعب هم اللي يحددوا الفيوتشر او المستقبل بتاع الشخص.
Okay.
This is my question.
We thank you very much. You can take a seat.
Thank you.
تماما يعني.
We have a little under 10 minutes, so I'm now going to invite the panel. I thank you all for your questions, your comments, and your incredible liveliness. I would like to return to our panel just for some closing thoughts of 1 or 2 minutes each before we wrap up. And really starting with Mohammed Yahya. Okay, great.
Okay, I'll make really quick comments. I think that one thing that would really make a difference. I mean, if you don't have to look at just the funding, which I feel that a lot of people are fixated on as the single real problem. I would say that our bigger problem is actually education, and I wouldn't say just the lack of critical thinking, but the lack of universities that can create a place for free thinking, where people can express themselves freely, because this is the only atmosphere that science can flourish in. Otherwise, it will just not happen. I remember my days at university. Very depressingly, they were not good. Horrible education. I was never encouraged to think for myself. And I would really like this to change in the future. And I think that this is where you start. And the students that come out of this system, they will be able to find their own sources of funding. The money is there. This is at least how I see it. The money is there, but there isn't enough people who are well-equipped or prepared enough to receive that money or make use of that money. So I think that the students who can actually change, who will actually go through the change system, hopefully if there's a change system, and once we have this science culture in place, there will be great ideas being generated in universities. And I think that these students will be the ones who will be able to find their funding. They will not have to depend exclusively on funding from the government. Of course, that will have to increase. There's no doubt that the money is being put there right now is mediocre, and it will have to increase. But this will not have to be the only source. There are many sources, and I don't think there's a problem with the students themselves. Like Dr. Azazi said, the students are great. They just need to be encouraged. And I would love for universities to be a place that does that. And I know that Dr. Azazi is doing that in his lab, but I would like to see this happening in other universities. I'm not just talking about Cairo University or Ain Shams University. I'm talking about universities in much smaller towns. They deserve a chance as well. So this is the thing I see as the real problem and the real obstacle that we'll have to work on.
Thank you, Mohammed. Hassan Azazi.
Two brief comments. Number one, the young girl from high school education. One thing happened that is good in this country that we have, that they built a very strong internet and become now very cheap. On the internet, Google, YouTube, other sites, wonderful. I, as a teacher of chemistry, download lots of movies and animations and questions and answers. I mean, you have the entire globe open to you through the internet. Education will take time to be fixed. And some teachers are good and some teachers are not good. So we need to acknowledge this. Not all teachers are bad. What we need to find a solution today. So you need to be innovative and entrepreneurial. All of us need to be today, not tomorrow. Because we need to improve ourselves today and tomorrow, not 5 years or 10 years from today after the government wake up and fix everything. So again, internet is there, it's cheap. you go and teach yourself how to collect information. This is the most important thing, not to learn the subject, but how to look for the information and for lifelong learning, how to keep updating yourself. This is very important. So I think I do not, يعني بصراحة I do not, I'm a graduate of كلية العلوم جامعة اسكندرية و graduate of high school in كرموز بصراحة يعني. No, هي مكانها يعني انا كنت بشوف يعني وانا رايح المدرسه كل يوم كنا بنشوف جنازه يعني اما رايحين مع جنازه اما جايين معاها يعني واخدين ثواب قد كده مش بهزر بتكلم بجد فدي يعني مش عايز اقول لك طبعا education شكله ايه بس وانا اقول لك is do not accept failure, do not sit back and wait for things to come to you. No, entrepreneurial and innovative today, not tomorrow. حلو. Thank you. About funding, again بس two things. مصر الخير ومع الأكاديمية حلولنا بعقولنا. تدي له proposal 2 pages أو 3 pages على حاجة حلولنا بعقولنا حاجة applied يدي لك 300,000 جنيه 300,000 Egyptian pound بياخد منك 2.5% لو عملت شركة وبعتها قبل كده. This is wonderful. 2.5% يدي لك 300,000 pound النهارده. أنا على الكوميتي مش لاقيين proposal تيجي. We don't have enough proposal to come to the committee. So this is something they need to consider. Dr. Abdullah Dar from Canada, he was here 2 days ago and gave a lecture for the TWAS conference. عندهم agency بيدي $100,000 $100,000 for 1 page proposal for a good innovative idea. تخش على الانترنت بتحط 1 page proposal مش هتخسر حاجة. It will be judged by their agency, give you $100,000. If later on you prove that this can result in a prototype or something, this goes up to $1 million as far as he mentioned. Look up Abdullah Dar, is here in the conference. And this is a good opportunity for funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael.
Just 2 quick final points. One, something we haven't really talked about is the public perception of science, how the public perceives science and scientists. It's easy for us here to believe that research and development leads to economic and social development. But you can't presume that people outside of science will get that message. I think it's going to be very important to demonstrate that research leads to innovation, leads to productivity, leads to jobs. Secondly, well, this is just an observation really about from my time, amazing time I've had in Egypt over the last year and a half, 1 or 2, 3 trips here. I remember when the Tunisian revolution happened, a lot of Western commentators in my country said, oh, it's not going to happen in Egypt because they think differently or they're not revolutionaries or there isn't that kind of spirit. And how wrong they were. And it's just a joy to come back after that revolution and to hear as I've said before, this optimistic spirit. And I really hope that you are all given the opportunity to channel that optimism before, your hope runs out, if you like.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Dr. Magid.
انت محمد تحب نعمل لك مؤتمر لوحدك يا محمد ان شاء الله هنعمل لك مؤتمر لوحدك ما تقلقش
Thank you very much. Thank you, Magid.
I would like to compliment what Dr. Azazi said that we have been a program called حلولنا بعقولنا. I think it's
Let's hear our final speaker in some silence. Thank you.
It's a very nice program and we are now I will not repeat what he has been said. Up to 250,000 and maybe more for any applicant who provide a good idea. And not only that, but we can provide them with the facility of the industrial prototyping facility. And we have that, and we are putting bigger equipment for this to help him how we can make the design and how to make the prototype. We need to think outside the box, not only publication, but we need to go to the patent and prototype. Finally, I would like to say this. Over the past year, and I'm addressing this to Muhammad, okay? If we ask how many people are speaking and understanding politics, we're only very few. But now we have 82 million who understands politics. I hope this 82 million will also understand science and technology. And I'm sure if we follow with the same spirit and with the same momentum we have now and the same optimism we have now, I'm sure we will be able to spread the word around. As we learn politics, we will learn science and technology. And I'm very optimistic. I always think that the Egyptians who were able to build wonder over the years and over the civilization, and all the civilizations are ups and downs. And now I think we are at the beginning of our ups, and I'm sure within a few years we will be able to achieve the target we want, as long as we have a very good spirited young people who a lot of countries envy us for. So I hope that, that this is the message at the end. I mean, we are happy with atlases. We're happy to be compared with others. We're happy to put everything on document, and we document all our mistakes and all our good experience and all our bad experience. But the most important thing is how to look for the future and how to use the spirit of what happened to be able to move to a better economy and a better life for all Egyptians. Thank you.
Thank you, Magid. Now, thank you so much. Just before I'm going to say a few closing words. Before I do, I'm just going to invite Luke Clark, who has travelled from London and is a representative of the Royal Society, just to say a few words as he's been with us throughout this debate tonight.
Thanks, Hassan. I just wanted to say a very quick thank you to our partners at the Bibliotheca for organising an absolutely excellent discussion tonight. I'd like to thank Michael and the writing team at the Bibliotheca, Heba Maram, Asma Suleiman, Riyam Katab, who've been writing the report, to the other speakers, to Ehsan for chairing, and to the audience. The report will be out soon. We're confident it's going to be an excellent piece of work, so do look out for it. Go to the Royal Society website and you can pre-order your copy for when it's published. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Luke. Well, it just leaves me to say thank you so much to our panel. Thank you for coming. I've had a really enjoyable few days back in Alexandria after the revolution, and I hope to be back again. Thank you. Good night.